I want to tell you about a conversation I had with my grandfather. He was 84 years old, sharp as ever, and we were sitting at his kitchen table, the same table he had owned for 52 years. Not because he couldn't afford a new one, because it still worked perfectly. Because in his mind, replacing something that still functioned was one of the most wasteful things a person could do. He told me something that afternoon that I have never forgotten. He said, "Zane, the people who always seem to have money are not the ones who earn the most. They are the ones who lose the least." I drove home from that conversation, and I sat with it for 3 days. I kept turning it over. Lose the least. Not earn the most. Lose the least.
And then I started researching, and I found an entire culture, one of the oldest, most sophisticated, most economically successful cultures in the world that had built its entire financial philosophy around that exact idea, around minimizing loss, around preserving value, around the quiet, consistent, almost invisible habits that compound into generational wealth without ever being loud or performative or flashy about it. I found Japan. My name is Zane, and I spend way too much time thinking about the invisible systems that govern our financial lives, the habits, the philosophies, the daily decisions that separate the people who build wealth slowly and permanently from the ones who work just as hard and somehow end up with nothing to show for it. If you've been trying to figure out why your financial life isn't moving the way it should be, despite working hard and earning decent money, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because today, I think we're going to find some answers.
Because today we're going through 10 powerful Japanese money habits that build wealth silently. And I am going to do something slightly different in this video. I'm not just going to tell you what these habits are, I want to tell you where they come from, why they were created, what ancient Japanese philosophy sits underneath each one. Because when you understand the root of a habit, not just the surface instruction, it changes from a rule you have to remember into a way of thinking that you simply can't unlearn. Let's start. There is a small island south of mainland Japan called Okinawa, and for decades, researchers studying longevity, the science of why certain people live dramatically longer than others, kept arriving at the same small island with the same puzzled expression. The people of Okinawa had something that most of the developed world had lost. They had what the Japanese call ikigai, pronounced ikigai. It means roughly reason for being. Your ikigai is the specific intersection of 4 things: what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. At the center of those 4 things is a purpose so clear, so grounding, so specifically yours, that it becomes the lens through which you see every decision in your life, including financial decisions. Here is what I mean. When I don't know what my ikigai is, when I am living without a clear sense of what actually matters to me, I fill that gap with stuff. I buy things that represent versions of myself I am not sure I want to be. I buy status, I buy novelty, I buy the feeling of forward momentum in the absence of actual direction. But when a person knows their ikigai, knows what they are building toward, what genuinely feeds their soul, every purchase passes through a filter. Does this serve my actual life? Does this align with who I actually am and what I am actually building? Most purchases fail that test, and the ones that fail that test quietly, automatically stop being purchased. Ikigai doesn't create a budget, it creates clarity. And clarity is the most powerful financial tool that no budgeting app has ever been able to replicate. In 1904, a journalist named Hani Motoko, one of the first female journalists in Japan's history, published a household financial system in a women's magazine. She called it Kakeibo. It means household financial ledger. And what she created 120 years ago is still one of the most effective money management systems in the world.
The practice is beautifully, deceptively simple. Before each month begins, you sit down with a physical journal, paper, pen, no phone, no app, and you answer 4 questions by hand. How much money do I have available this month? How much do I want to save? How much am I spending? And how can I improve? At the end of the month, you sit down again and answer the same 4 questions with what actually happened. The gap between what you planned and what actually happened is your teacher, not your judge, your teacher. The reason Kakeibo works where apps often don't is the physical act of writing. When you write something by hand, your brain processes it differently than when you type it or scroll past it on a screen. You are forced to hold each number in your attention long enough to actually form the letters. You cannot mindlessly scroll past a number you wrote yourself. The handwriting creates a relationship with your spending that digital tools simply cannot replicate. Studies of Kakeibo practitioners in Japan consistently show savings improvements of 10 to 35%, not through restriction, not through cutting out everything enjoyable, but purely through the awareness that the handwritten monthly review creates. Write it down, by hand, every month. That is the entire system, and it works better than every financial app I have ever downloaded. In Japanese, there's a single word that carries more financial wisdom than most personal finance books combined. That word is motanai, pronounced mo-tai-nai. It translates roughly as, what a waste, but the cultural weight it carries goes far beyond frustration at waste. Motanai is a philosophy, an ethical stance, a way of relating to every object, every resource, every dollar that enters your life. The 4 principles of Motanai are reduce, reuse, repair, and respect. And the financial application of these 4 principles over a lifetime produces outcomes that are genuinely staggering. Consider food. The average American household wastes between 30 and 40% of the food they buy. In Japan, food waste is among the lowest per capita of any developed nation. At an average American grocery spend of $8,000 per year, 35% waste is $2,800 in food thrown away annually. The Motanai household over a 30-year period recaptures approximately $84,000 in food alone, money that was being purchased and then thrown directly into the trash. Consider electronics. The average American replaces a smartphone every 2.5 years. Motanai practitioners maintain their devices, repair them when something breaks, treat them with the care that extends their useful life to 4 or 5 years. The difference in lifetime electronic spending between a Motanai household and an average American household is tens of thousands of dollars. Motanai does not ask you to deprive yourself. It asks you to fully use what you already have, to respect the value already in your possession, to recognize that every item you repair instead of replace, every meal you finish instead of throw away, is money that never needed to leave your account in the first place. The people of Okinawa, the same island where Ikigai is most deeply practiced, have one of the highest concentrations of centenarians in the world, people who live to 100 and beyond, actively, healthily, with cognitive function intact. And researchers studying them consistently identify a Confucian teaching that Okinawans have practiced at every meal for centuries. Hara Hachi Bu. Eat until you are 80% full. The concept is simple. Stop before you are completely full. Leave 20% on the table deliberately. This practice, applied to food over a lifetime, has measurable effects on longevity, metabolism, and cognitive function. But the financial application of Hara Hachibu is what I want you to understand today. Hara Hachibu is a financial philosophy, means deliberately stopping at 80% in every financial context. Buy the house that costs 80% of what you could technically afford. Drive the car that represents 80% of your maximum budget. Take the vacation that costs 80% of what you could spend. Design your lifestyle to operate consistently at 80% of your income ceiling. That 20% is not deprivation. That 20% is the wealth gap. Across a working lifetime, the person who consistently lives at 80% of their means accumulates the 20% difference in savings, investments, and financial security that the person living at 100% of their means never manages to build. The most destructive financial pattern in modern American life is not overspending on luxuries, it is lifestyle inflation, the automatic expansion of spending to meet and exceed income at every level. Every raise gets absorbed, every bonus gets spent, every increase in earning capacity gets translated immediately into an increase in lifestyle. Hara Hachibu asks a different question. What if comfortable enough was actually enough?
After World War II, Japan faced an economic rebuilding challenge unlike anything the modern world had seen. The country's industrial infrastructure was devastated. Its manufacturing capacity was essentially zero. And yet, within 30 years, Japanese manufacturing had become the most efficient, most consistently improving production system in the world. Companies like Toyota, Sony, and Honda had gone from rubble to global dominance. The philosophy behind that transformation had a name, Kaizen. It means change for good, or continuous improvement. The core principle is this: small, consistent, compounding improvements made every single day produce results that are dramatically larger and more sustainable than any single dramatic overhaul. Toyota's production system, built on Kaizen, does not make one massive improvement once a year. It makes thousands of tiny improvements every single day, across every level of the organization. No improvement is too small to matter. No process is too established to improve. The aggregation of marginal gains compounds into something that single dramatic interventions can never match. Applied to your financial life, Kaizen means this: stop waiting for the perfect moment to overhaul your finances. Stop telling yourself you will deal with your money when you get a raise, when the debt is paid off, when things settle down. Instead, make one tiny financial improvement this week. 1. Automate $25 more into savings. Cancel one unused subscription. Track your spending for 7 days. Read one chapter of a financial book. That is all. One improvement this week. And next week, one more. The mathematics of this are identical to compound interest. Small, consistent improvements over 10 years produce outcomes that are completely disproportionate to the individual size of the weekly actions that created them. The person who makes one tiny financial improvement per week for 10 years is unrecognizable financially from the person who waited for the perfect plan that never arrived. In Japanese aesthetics, architecture, music, and philosophy, there's a concept that has no direct English translation. It is called ma. It refers to the meaningful space between things, the pause between notes in music that gives the melody its shape, the silence between words in a conversation that gives the speaking its weight, the empty space in a room that makes the furniture meaningful, the gap between stimulus and response that makes a decision conscious rather than automatic. Ma is not emptiness, it is not absence, it is meaningful space, and it is one of the most powerful financial tools in Japanese culture. As a money habit, ma is the deliberate pause between desire and action. Before any non-essential purchase, you create ma. You do not immediately add to cart, you do not immediately say yes. You pause. You sit with the desire. You allow the space between impulse and action to exist. You inhabit that space long enough to ask, is this purchase serving my actual life, or is it serving a momentary emotional state? I practiced this for 3 months, and the results were extraordinary. Not because I denied myself things I genuinely wanted, but because in the space of the ma pause, sometimes 24 hours, sometimes 48, sometimes just a few mindful minutes, I discovered that the majority of my impulse desires simply dissolved. The thing that felt urgent and necessary in the moment revealed itself in the space of a few hours as a passing craving rather than a genuine need.
The Japanese approach of ma turns patience from a virtue into a practical strategy, and it does so not through willpower or restriction, but through the simple, profound act of inserting space between impulse and action. In Tokyo's Sukiyabashi neighborhood, there's a sushi restaurant with 10 seats. The chef has been making sushi for over 75 years. He has dedicated his entire life, every working day for 7 decades, to the mastery of a single craft. Not to building a restaurant empire, not to becoming famous, not to accumulating, to mastery, to the intrinsic, disciplined, lifelong pursuit of excellence in one thing. His name is Jiro Ono, and the Japanese word for what he is shokunin. Shokunin translates as craftsman or artisan, but the English word does not carry the full weight of the concept. A shokunin does not just practice a craft, they dedicate their existence to its mastery, not for external recognition, not for financial reward, for the intrinsic satisfaction of doing one thing with increasing excellence every day of their life. The financial implication of shokunin as a personal philosophy is profound. When your primary identity is consumer, when the central question of your discretionary time and income is what to acquire next, you are in a perpetual state of incompleteness. The consumption economy is built on engineering and maintaining that incompleteness. You are always one purchase away from the version of yourself you want to be. The next thing will complete you. It never does. Shokunin offers a completely different identity. When your primary identity is master, when the central question of your discretionary time is how to deepen your skill, your craft, your expertise, you become fundamentally complete in a way that consumption can never provide. And a person who feels genuinely complete buys dramatically less than a person who is trying to fill a void. You do not need to become Jiro Ono. You need to find something worth mastering and begin. The financial savings are almost a byproduct of the identity shift. There is a phenomenon that researchers in behavioral economics call conspicuous consumption, the deliberate display of wealth to signal social status, the expensive car not because it drives better, but because others can see it, the designer item not because it functions better, but because the logo is visible, the upgraded home in the right neighborhood, not because of the space, but because of the address. Conspicuous consumption is not a uniquely American phenomenon, but Japanese culture has one of the world's most consistent and deeply embedded countercultural responses to it. In Japan, the concept of okanemochi no kangaekata, roughly the wealthy person's way of thinking, reflects a cultural understanding that true wealth is quiet, that the display of wealth is considered somewhat tasteless, that the person who announces their financial success is immediately viewed with mild suspicion rather than admiration. The wealthiest families in Japan are often the least visibly wealthy. Quality is present, excess is not. This creates a financial habit with extraordinary power. When you are not performing wealth for an audience, when every financial decision is made for your actual life rather than for how it will appear to others, you keep dramatically more money. I did the math on my own life. I calculated every purchase I had made in the previous year that was motivated, at least in parts, by how it would appear to others. The total was uncomfortable. Not because any single purchase was outrageous, but because the accumulation of appearance-motivated spending was significant. Thousands of dollars annually spent performing a version of financial success for an audience that, honestly, was not paying nearly as much attention as I thought. The question that Okanemochi no Kangaekata asks is simple. Who are you spending for? Walk into any convenience store in Japan. And Japan has some of the most extraordinary convenience stores in the world, a cultural institution worthy of their own video, and watch how transactions are handled. Every denomination of currency is treated with the same deliberate care. The 1 yen coin, worth less than 1 American cent, is accepted,
handled, stored, and saved with the same intentionality as the 10,000 yen note. Nothing is carelessly discarded. Nothing is too small to matter. This stands in stark contrast to a pattern I see constantly in American financial culture, the casual dismissal of small amounts. It's only $5. It's just a small charge. It doesn't really add up to anything. I have said all of these things. You have probably said some version of them.
But the math of small amounts compounded over time is one of the most underestimated forces in personal finance. $5 every day is $1,825 per year. Invested at average market returns over 30 years, that $5 per day becomes approximately $200,000. The $12 monthly subscription you forgot about is $144 per year. The $8 coffee you grab without thinking 4 times a week is $1,664 per year. The casual rounding down of small amounts, the cultural habit of treating anything below a certain threshold as financially irrelevant, is often the entire gap between the person who accumulates wealth and the person who wonders where it went. Yen by yen thinking is not about denying yourself coffee. It is about treating every dollar as the beginning of the next 1,000, because mathematically, that is exactly what it is.
I want to end with the one that I think is the most important and the least discussed. In 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake struck the coast of Japan. The resulting tsunami devastated entire communities. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their homes, their possessions, their businesses. The human cost was staggering. And in the aftermath, international observers noted something that became widely reported and widely discussed: the response of the Japanese people, the absence of looting, the orderly distribution of aid, the patience in lines that stretched for hours, the dignity in the face of genuine catastrophe. That dignity had a name: gamen. Gamen translates roughly as enduring the seemingly unbearable with patience and dignity. It is the practice of tolerating difficulty without complaint, of maintaining composure under pressure, of continuing to function, to care for others, to uphold standards of behavior, even when circumstances have made everything harder. As a financial habit, gamen is not glamorous. It does not have a clever app. It does not produce a satisfying graph. It is simply the internal resource, the quiet resolve that keeps you going when the financial habits get hard. Because they do get hard. The Kakeibo reveals a month where you overspent significantly, and you have to sit with that honestly without quitting the practice. The Motanai principle asks you to repair something when replacing it would be so much faster and easier. The Hara Hachibu ceiling means watching your colleagues upgrade their homes and cars while you deliberately stay below your ceiling. The Kaizen improvements are small, and the compounding is invisible for years before it becomes visible. Gamen is what keeps you going through all of that, not because you are suffering, not because you have found some iron-willed discipline that other people lack, but because you have developed the quiet certainty that what you are building is worth the patience it requires. The Japanese do not describe gamen as sacrifice. They describe it as dignity, the dignified endurance of a person who knows that the short term and the long term are not the same thing, and who has chosen the long term with calm, unhurried resolve. Here is what I want to leave you with. My grandfather sat at that 52-year-old kitchen table and told me that the people who always seem to have money are not the ones who earn the most. They are the ones who lose the least. He did not know the Japanese names for what he was describing. He had never heard of Kakeibo or Motenai or Hara Hachibu, but he had lived them all, quietly, consistently, for his entire adult life. And at 84, he was one of the most financially secure people I knew, not because he had ever earned a dramatic income, but because he had never allowed his life to lose more than it gained. That is the Japanese approach to money. That is what these 10 habits produce when you practice them together over time. Not the flashy wealth that announces itself, not the dramatic financial transformation that happens over a weekend, the quiet, consistent, compounding accumulation of a life that loses the least. Silent wealth, built habit by habit, day by day, yen by yen. Pick one habit from this list and start this week. Just one. Kaizen, remember? One improvement, one beginning. If this video gave you something real to think about, smash that like button and subscribe because we're going to keep doing this, pulling back the curtain on the financial philosophies and invisible systems that actually build wealth, quietly, permanently, and completely. I'll see you in the next one.